Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Road to Freedom podcast. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Matt.
And this is episode 14. We're one away from being a real podcast, a long-lasting podcast.
Yeah, 15 episodes. That's the benchmark.
Yeah, that's all we have to do. Once there, we can rest on our laurels and just replay old episodes.
Replay old episodes, and then we'll get monetized one day.
Yeah, one of these days. So let's see. Last episode we focused on the elections, and of course the Libertarians just did a stellar job, as in they lost pretty much everything.
Yeah.
The rules were stacked against them, and also no one really listens to us. So that's what this podcast is, hopefully getting out there, and you can share it and introduce people to the benefits of libertarianism. We were talking as we were walking one day that it wasn't until really like Ron Paul, so 2008, 2012, that we even really heard about libertarianism. And like I said, I was politically involved in some ways. I was a Bush supporter back in the day, but I don't think I've ever heard. I remember listening to Ron Paul on Alex Jones' show back in the day when I used to listen to the Alex Jones show. But the message of libertarianism, I don't even think I knew about the U.S. Constitution Party and the Taxpayer Party more than I did libertarianism.
Yeah, I didn't, and like I was saying the other day, I didn't even know about libertarianism until the last presidential election. You know, it was the extremes of like, I don't like that person, I don't like that person, but you only choose from two. And it was still in the primaries though. And one of my buddies, good old Oosborn, he was just like, yeah, check out these people. So that's when my eyes were open, just in 2016.
Yeah. I think I started listening to the Tom Woods show when I bought a house and needed to do a bunch of yard work. I was like, well, all right, this guy seems interesting, and he's got like, a couple hundred episodes, and I went from conservative to a minarchist to an anarchist to a anarcho-capitalist, and started getting more into economics. So this it's a dark path that you travel when you go down the libertarian rabbit hole. So hopefully we'll get there and get people down there more and more.
I can't lie. What really sold me was when I heard that Clint Eastwood is a libertarian.
Yeah.
I said, oh, he's a libertarian. I Googled him, and it was, I forget what show. He was on, like, the Ellen DeGeneres show or something like that, and they actually explained it. He goes, it's pretty much just like, you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. Let's just do our own thing. And I go, you know what? I could get behind that.
Yeah, especially with that gruff voice.
Yeah. It sounded way better when he said it, obviously. Like,
well, that is pretty much the basis of the non-aggression principle. So that kind of transitions into what our show is today. And we're going to talk a little bit about the California wildfires, and we're going to apply it to a local perspective. But we're also going to be covering, at least partially today, the article on libertarianism.org from this author, Matt Zwolinski.
Zwolinski.
Yeah.
Zwolinski.
There you go. Thank you. People just need to have normal last names so that I can not mispronounce them and look foolish. But anyway, that tries to argue why we shouldn't accept the non-aggression principle as the foundation principle of libertarian ethics, which is odd. And so he's got 6 points that we're going to go over. So we're going to try and debunk them, or maybe it makes valid points. Probably not, though. So currently, California is on fire yet again, and
two different places.
It's really God's judgment on California for having campgrounds.
He just doesn't want California to be there anymore. He keeps giving them hints, but they're not taking it.
Yeah. Just get shovels and start trying to go off into the ocean. But as we're looking at the news stories, you have like 40 people dead. You have a bunch of people complaining that they weren't notified beforehand. You have Trump tweeting that the wildfire service money is being poorly mismanaged. And then on top of that, you have Kanye West once again back in the news saying that not only did he use the capitalistic system of tyranny to hire indentured servants to come and fight fires to protect him, but he also just put people under the thumb of his tyrannical capitalism by also saving everybody in his neighborhood.
Yep.
Because he has the cash to do that.
Because he decided to hire private firefighters and not only saved his own house, but his entire neighborhood.
Yeah.
Or at least part of his neighborhood.
Yeah, so let's even say that that is a selfish thing to do, that by saving other people's houses, it makes his house less likely to burn down. Okay, so he was still able to use a selfish means and benefit people, and he had the foresight to use his financial means to have a perspective that he viewed as important, that he wanted to save his house, and he was able to find people that were willing to exchange their time and labor and their safety for whatever money he was paying for, and ultimately saved an entire neighborhood full of rich people and rich houses. There's nothing wrong with that, morally or ethically.
And he probably ended up letting, or he theoretically, he could have saved even more houses than that by firefighters not having to come to his area, because he hired his own that had that area contained. So the other, public firefighters and everything like that had more time to go fight more important areas.
Yeah. So rich people should be hiring more private fire departments so that the public ones can focus on middle and lower income areas.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you build your house in a place where fire is able to come in and sweep it down and destroy it, that is the chance you take.
Yeah.
That's
why you get fire insurance.
Yeah.
And you evacuate as soon as you just think that you need to. Yeah.
There's people who shouldn't be shocked when tornadoes sweep down through Tornado Alley in Kansas.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be a surprise from anybody in Florida that hurricanes tend to hit Florida. And sadly, flood insurance is almost universally guaranteed by the federal government. So it's something that, here again, you have the government coming in, and the fire service of using federal funds to protect California. So your and mine taxes, whatever percentage it is, goes towards helping California protect itself from itself. And that's just that should be wrong. It should be. We fought a war by saying, what does the King George have any say over what happens in this country from across the pond, from this giant body of water?
Mm-hmm.
So what does Washington, D.C. have to do against wildfires in California, in a state across the nation?
Yeah. I mean, I think Trump had a good point with his, saying it's been mismanaged. Maybe a bit soon, to tweet that out. Yeah. Bad timing.
Yeah.
But he had a good point, because, if I'd like to see, it'd be interesting to see, a breakdown of what California's spending all this federal aid already to help mitigate wildfires. It'd be interesting to see where it's all spent, because, are they really spending it on the right things? Because, they have so many wildfires now that it's, I just don't understand it.
Yeah, well, and we were listening to a podcast yesterday where someone was saying, we took our folks out to this area, and they really built houses around nature, and you had trees coming up through the floorboards, and now that place is burnt to the ground. Yeah, well, great. You wanted to protect nature, but this is what nature does to you. This is the the unvarnished look at what nature truly does to itself, and that's why mankind can be the greatest benefit to itself. Is that we have controlled nature. We saw that photo yesterday from Mel Gibson's house, and it looks like he's got a fire ring around him where. He still has woods around his.
Who knows?
His
he
house.
might have hired somebody to do a control burn or something.
Yeah, it looks like he put in the time and the effort to protect what he found valuable.
Yeah, he either did something to help protect his house, or he is the luckiest man in the world, because it's literally a small green island in the middle of a black charred area.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is what Ron Paul got flack for when he told people. In Texas that they needed to kind of sandbag their own house and protect it from the oncoming flood and not rely on FEMA to come in and save them or be able to protect their house, and got scoffed at. But yet you look at pictures of when the flooding occurred, and some houses were lost who tried it. But there are other ones that were saved, and it's a big old green patch in the middle of a murky water. So it's why you shouldn't rely definitely on the federal government, but on any government protecting what you find valuable, because it's not the firefighter's desire to save your property. That's your desire, if so choose. Or you let it burn and collect in the insurance because you don't really care about it that much. But you can't rely on firefighters or the wildfire service notifying you. That's where these 40 people who have tragically have died. How many of them were waiting to be told that they needed to flee fire? Well, that's kind of the risk that you take by living in a wildfire area. And
like the video that everyone's sharing of the lady that's driving through, like, with fire on either side. Like, that's pretty scary, but another interesting thing is how long was she just stuck somewhere, or did she just wait too long to evacuate?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because if that's me, I'm getting out of Dodge.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's a fire and it's kind of nearby. All right, I think I'm going to take some vacation time and leave. Yeah. I'm going to go to, like, Seattle, where they don't have fires because it rains all the time.
Exactly. Yep.
But I'm only staying there as long as I have to.
And especially Seattle. And we have something like this in Michigan, where I believe in Augusta, they have this group of houses that are under siege from being under sieged by water, and they're wanting the DEQ, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, to figure something out in order to save their houses from this overflooding. But don't build your houses in natural floodplains, or this is the type of risk you take. Same thing with people who have beachfront property. Yep, beachfront property is expensive and it's nice and you can take your boat out, but then when the tsunami hits,
you're the first to go.
Sorry, but you're out of luck. It's what New York and California and Los Angeles try and say that every other state is a flyover state, so really they're the only ones that matter. But yet when it comes to tough love for any of the coastal states, they're like, oh, the people inside in the states inland just don't care about us. Yep, this is what it's like. You when global warming hits and your houses are underwater and Ohio suddenly becomes the Atlantic coast, then you can start moving there. But that's the chance we all take in living in the areas that we want. In Michigan, you have to abide by all 4 seasons happening the same day, and so your vehicle is gonna take a hit for that, or your roof is gonna need to be replaced.
Your roads are gonna be terrible.
Yeah, I think for some odd reason, Michigan roads deteriorate more under the salt and the blades, but that's the price that you pay for living in that area, and
Yep.
so it's not up to any government agency to protect you from that. It's up to you to protect yourself from it.
Well, it's like the baseball stadium in town here. It
Yeah.
anytime we get a heavy rain, it just floods instantly because it's right next to the river, and it's so low that they just. I hope that they just already schedule. If I was the owner or something over there, I would just already schedule rain days, because it's like, hey guys, we know we're gonna get flooded at some point this year.
Yeah.
So these are the days we'll play for the games we're gonna miss, because we decided to build a baseball stadium in a flood zone.
Well, and isn't that one publicly owned too?
Yeah, I think it is.
So I mean, there you go. That shows you what. Oh, this is really cheap land, and it won't cost the taxpayers too much. Well, half our season's a wash because.
A wash, get it?
I mean, we can play water polo in it. Maybe there's
You can go fishing.
some cross platform.
You don't want to eat those fish though.
No, not in the Kalamazoo River. All right. So this news article, I don't know how far we're going to get through because we might go on too many rants, but it's entitled 6 Reasons Libertarians Should Reject the Non-Aggression Principle. So the past several episodes we've been going over the non-aggression principle and applying it to different situations. And so here are 6 kind of areas where this author is saying that a stringent application of non-aggression principle has morally unacceptable implications. Which, right off the bat, so you're saying that to not use the force or threat of force against a person is morally unacceptable, and there's a better moral position to overtake the non-aggression principle. I'd like to know what that is.
It's by taking aggression, right?
Yeah, I mean, at some level,
That's the
it has
opposite
to
of
be.
non-aggression. Is aggression.
Yeah, and through this article, other than utilitarianism, which is just, it's not, utilitarianism is just what seems to be the biggest benefit, regardless of what it might be. So, if you have to kill 50 people to save 51 people, utilitarian says you should do so because at least then 51 people will survive. So that's how utilitarians tend to weigh arguments. But here, it's not even clear that he takes that stance, and he really offers no other argument for what should overtake and be more moralistic.
Yeah, that's really what I didn't like about this article is like, because you get done reading it and it's okay. Here's 6 reasons why libertarians should reject the non-aggression principle, but what are we going to put in place then? What's better than the non-aggression principle? And that's one thing. Get later on to the article, he just does not get.
So the article starts out, many libertarians believe that the whole of their political philosophy can be summed up in a single simple principle, the principle, that non-aggression principle or non-aggression axiom. Axiom just kind of means area that's should always be held to be true. Holds that aggression against the person or property of others is always wrong, where aggression is defined narrowly in terms of the use of or threat of physical violence. And I think that's kind of where he gets it wrong, because yes, we tend to sometimes oversimplify and say force, the threat of force, but there is an underlying assumption in the non-aggression principle which has to do with property rights. And do you own your own body? Yes. Do you own the product of your own labor? Yes. Then what just cause could there be to deprive you of that? And if it's through force, we say it's illegitimate, and force could be anything through physical violence, threat, intimidation. So, pay your taxes or we'll come and lock you up. That's not actual aggression, but it is a threat of aggression. If I trade you, $100 for what I tell you is, a Rembrandt painting, and I tell you it's genuine and find out that it's not true, well, I've just deprived you of your $100 under false pretense. We would say that that is a form of aggression in that the contractual violation has occurred, and there's no physical threat of violence there. But that's where I think this author misses the point a lot, is that there's no understanding of kind of property rights.
Yeah.
I'm kind of skipping around, so I'm not reading the whole thing here. On its face, the NEP prohibits the aggression of aggression falls nicely in line with common sense. After all, who doesn't think it's wrong to steal someone else's property, and etc. But the NEP's plausibility is superficial. It is, of course, common sense to think that aggression is a bad thing. Is it common sense? Because if you take an understanding of evolutionary thought, then aggression is the primary means by which we've decided things, and it's if you believe in evolution or not evolution, violence has always been there, kind of since the beginning, as a means by which people settle benefits. So to say that it's common sense to believe it's a bad thing, I don't think that's always been the case, and it's clearly not today, because we are actively engaged in a culture that uses force or the threat of force to do bad things.
Yeah, and if aggression was, the use of aggression was a common sense thing, then I mean we wouldn't have that many crimes and that kind of thing too. I mean, people are committing assault all the time on other people.
Right. But it's far from common sense to think that its badness is absolute, such that the wrongness of aggression always trumps any other possible consideration of justice or political morality. And I don't know what that means. So justice is one thing, but political morality. So if your political system is moral or not, I don't see what he's saying there.
I think one thing that he kind of misses right there is because he's talking about. I think he just thinks people who are libertarian that believe in the non-aggression principle are like pacifists and stuff like that. Where we're like, because I mean, you know, aggression is okay if you've been aggressed upon. Like, you know, if I've got,
right,
you know, if my life's in threat and someone's coming at me and I have to defend myself, then I can use the right to defend myself and theoretically use aggression upon that person because they're coming at me. And it just seems like this guy's not grasping that kind of thing. He just thinks that all libertarians have to be pacifists because they believe in non-aggression. But it's like, it's just non-aggression until we're aggressed upon. Like, we'll defend ourselves, but, you know, we're not going to be the ones out there instigating the thing.
Right. And if you have, like, your TV stolen from your house, you hiring an agency to go back and find the person who did that and collect that TV back, plus, you know, the compensation for everything that went on. That's not aggression either. Yeah. That's a form of justice. It's restorative justice.
I think that the guy in this article views that as aggression. He says, you know, you coming back, you know, for that Rembrandt that was stolen. I think he actually uses a thing like that. For that Rembrandt that the fake one that was sold to you, you hire an agency to go in and get that money back or get the real Rembrandt that guy holds on to, then you're not using aggression on that person. You're just getting justice in a way. Because they were the ones that, and if you are using aggression, if you look at it as you're using aggression, then you're just using aggression after you've been aggressed upon in a justified way.
So, like, if you look at the just war principle, one of the biggest factors is whether or not you're having to defend yourself from an aggressive actor. So, to engage in war is not an act of aggression in defense of yourself. It's a defensive action. Aggression might need to occur to stop a continuing attack, but the entity or the body that has started it has forfeited their right to not be aggressed upon, and so you don't commit war crimes and say that it's justified. You use the most reasonable amount of force to stop the aggression, and then to take proper means to compensate yourself for what has occurred. Let's see. It says there is a vast difference between a strong but defensible presumption against the justice of aggression and an absolute universal prohibition. There is a vast difference between a strong but defensible presumption against the justice of aggression and absolute universal prohibition. And yeah, I think you're right. We're not saying that you have to be a pacifist. You can be a pacifist by all means.
Yeah, totally, if you want to be.
But there's the universal prohibition seems to miss the mark there. In the remainder of this essay, I want to present 6 reasons why libertarians should reject the NAP. Not improve upon it, but reject it is what he's saying.
Entirely.
So he's got 6 points that are going to make us question
change our minds.
Our entire motive.
Where's Crowder? Change our minds.
Each is logically independent of the other. Taken together, I think they make a fairly overwhelming case. So number 1, here you go, Matt. Prohibits all pollution. Rothbard himself, Murray Rothbard, the genius, the man, the myth, the legend, recognized the industrial pollution violates the NAP and must therefore be prohibited. But Rothbard did not draw the full implications of his principle. Not just industrial pollution, but personal pollution produced by driving, burning wood in one's fireplace, smoking, etc., runs afoul of the NAP. The NAP implies that all of these activities must be prohibited, no matter how beneficial they may be in other respects, and no matter how essential they are to daily life in modern industrial world, and this is deeply implausible. So we cannot act as actors and benefit if we pollute. And so you breathing carbon or driving your car or starting a fire, that all aggresses upon everything. And in fact, there are some libertarians who tend to be in a minarchist camp who say that we need things like the EPA or the police to be able to tell factories not to pollute, because there's no way that a completely independent from the state society could ever figure this stuff out. Mm-hmm. So what do we do? So pollution is definitely a problem. However, once we apply private property to things, we tend to see that this solves itself. So industrial pollution. I moved my house in, my family in. A waste treatment plant comes in and dumps chemicals into the water and pollutes my drinking water, makes me sick. I've been aggressed upon because they have dumped their chemicals into my property, and so I can go out and seek compensation from them and also stop any further aggression upon my person or my property. So to say pollution is kind of one of those gotchas, it doesn't take into effect private property, and so that's what we have there.
Yeah, we all see what happens when the government, pollutes its own people, Flint.
Yeah, it's the government, for all its regulations, is about how much you can pollute. So it's
pollute up to a certain amount. You can pollute up to a certain amount. It's like if we had more private property kind of things, it's like, no, I don't want you polluting at all on my land.
Yeah, and so who writes those laws? They're the bigger industry actors, who then use those regulations to stop up and coming people or to penalize their competition. So cap and trade stuff. While a big name in industry can kind of take those factors in, especially if they've had the benefit of being in business for 100 or plus years, and they can kind of roll with the punches. But if you want to come and start up your own, one-man water treatment place, well, then you have to pay for all these testings and all this, all these regulations that may not even apply to what you want to do, but because they're an industry standard that's backed by force and the law, you have to adhere to them.
Yeah, and then this guy, talking about fireplace and campfires, is he like saying just because you're having a campfire and it's not pure oxygen in the air anymore that you're now polluting? Is that what he's saying?
That's where I think he gets it wrong too, because you have to prove harm. So if someone burns a wood fire and you cough because of it, unless if that act of doing so harms you, there's no violation there.
The way this guy thinks, then California just aggressed upon California
in some way,
because they just were on fire, and that's pollution.
Yeah,
I think it's so and then he, with all of his like 6 points, because he's saying pretty much the NAP prohibits all pollution. Is he saying that we should allow pollution then? Or because we should reject the fact that the NAP prohibits pollution?
Yeah, I don't know what his counter argument to any of these are, as far as what he would say that so pollution is fine, or we pollution up to a certain amount is okay, but you have to prove harm to you. It's not that I was in the if you're walking down the hall and you accidentally bump into somebody, have you aggressed upon them? Well, no, because no harm was done. It's
a slight little bump, and it's no big deal.
There's no meaning to it, and there's no there's no full legitimate harm. However, if someone comes up to you and slugs you in the face, then there's the mens rea and the actus reus that come into play, and so there's meaning behind it, and there's an act of aggression. So here it's not that driving your car is aggressing upon people. It's could be a violation of property rights, but you then have to prove harm because of it.
This guy should make electric cars cheaper, and then we wouldn't have to worry about that part.
Well,
of it.
And that's the funny thing about capitalism too, is that all these people decry, capitalism pollutes the world and it's terrible and everything, but who do you see that is fighting for things like conservation and stuff like that? It's always been industrialized areas. You're not surviving hand over fist for your next meal, and you're able to look around you and go, oh, where'd the buffalo go? Oh, okay, let's breed them in captivity, charge hunters to come hunt them on preserved land, and then use that money to then continue to flourish the buffalo.
Yeah.
That's what happens with industrialized nations. You never find people who are starving, who are working day after day for the meal of the day, for them to go, what are we doing to the environment?
We're not hunters gatherers anymore. We've brought our food to us.
Yeah, and some of the biggest pollution is things like wood fires. It's only until you get into industrialization that you stop burning wood that causes a bigger impact on pollution. And pollution is definitely it could be a violation of the non-aggression principle, but you actually have to prove harm, and you have to take the basis of the non-aggression principle, which is property rights. Do you own your own property? Do you own your own body? Do you own the products of your labor? And it doesn't seem like this person understands that. Prohibits small harms for large benefits. The NAP prohibits all pollution because it prohibits an aggression is absolute. No amount of aggression, no matter how small, is morally permissible, and no amount of offsetting benefits can change this fact. But suppose, to borrow a thought from Hume, that can prevent the destruction of the whole world by lightly scratching your finger, Or to take a perhaps more plausible example, suppose that by imposing a very small tax on billionaires, I could provide life-saving vaccines for tens of thousands of desperately poor children. Even if we grant that taxation is aggression and that aggression is generally wrong, it is really so obvious that the relatively minor aggression involved in these examples is wrong, given the tremendous benefit it produces. Well, yes. So, kind of the road to hell is paved in good intentions here. If someone wants to lightly scratch my finger to save the world, I'm going to let them. But again, you have to cause harm, and yeah, that might be the morally just thing to do. Let's take a bigger one. The maniacal bad guy tells you to go, punch your mother in the face, and he'll stop his reign of terror, and you do it. Okay, that might have been the moral response to stop the world, but you still have to pay the price for what's been done.
Yeah, your dad's still gonna beat you up because you just punched your mother.
So the benefit, that's a utilitarian argument, and so he's missing a point here, and especially with the taxes. Yes, great. You've provided all these necessary things for children, for vaccinations, and all you've done is you've stolen money from rich people that can afford it. But there are other ways of going about it. There's these types of thought experiments give you a false dilemma. It's either this or it's this, and that's not always the case, especially in real world examples.
Yeah, with the example that he gives, a more plausible example, he says, is the tax on a very, very small tax on billionaires to help get vaccines for all these kids. Has anyone ever thought of just asking the billionaires if they'd like to donate some money? Yeah. Like, that's why the answer isn't always, hey, let's just tax it, because you're now taking away all these people's money that they worked hard for. It's like, because if I were a billionaire and someone's like, hey, if you just give $1,000, we'll be able to vaccinate 100,000 kids in Africa for whatever disease. I mean, if I'm a billionaire already, $1,000 is nothing to me. I'd be like, okay, yeah, here's $2,000. Mm-hmm. People can be a lot more generous if you ask for their, like, and you don't you petition for their money. You don't just sit there and say, hey, I want the government to now forcibly take that money from them. Yeah, because they're billionaires; they can find ways around it.
It's a difference between walking up to somebody and playing the knockout game with them, where you punch them as hard as you can to try and knock them out, and the MMA. The MMA is there aggression there? Yep, there sure is.
In fact, both agreeing into they have contractual agreements. Yeah. They sign themselves to say, hey, right, I'm gonna try to punch this guy and knock him out and beat him up. Mm-hmm. And it's like an easy example. I mean, if you ask me if I want Girl Scout cookies, I'm gonna say yeah, and I'm gonna take those Thin Mints and Samoas. But if you then come to me and tell me I legally have to buy like 5 boxes of cookies every year, I'm not gonna enjoy them that much either. And I might try to duck and dive out of the way of the crazy Girl Scouts.
Always.
But if they come up to me and ask me, then yeah, because it goes towards their little foundation, that the Girl Scouts, and and the cookies are delicious. But don't force the cookies. I don't have to buy them. I choose to buy them.
Yeah. So I view this one as a false dilemma. So if you have to scratch my finger, yeah, I'm gonna say it's a violation at first. But then you're like, oh, hold up a minute. If I didn't scratch your finger, then the entire world would go away. I'm gonna say, you know what? Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and under that, that person that needs to scratch your finger to save the entire world is not committing aggression, because you have allowed them to scratch your finger. Yeah. You have said, scratch my finger, and it's no longer aggression because you're allowing it. You told them to right, save the world.
Yeah. So going on to somebody's property to then provide them with CPR to save their life. Did you aggress against their property if there's no trespassing warnings? Absolutely. But who's afterwards is going to say, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have saved my life by performing CPR. Or if you did, you would say, you knew the repercussions for it, and there's a toll to pay. And so it's not like, hey, it's we're going to cut off your head if you walk onto somebody's property and give them CPR. It's proportional to the amount of harm caused.
Yeah.
Which $5 maybe.
Yeah.
To come save your life, and then you provide them a bill for medical service that's rendered.
Yeah, give me a citation for trespassing on your property, and I'm gonna give you the bill for doing CPR for you.
So non-aggression principle is an axiom that says when should force be used and when is it proper. There are proper times to use force.
That's the thing.
And this is what this one doesn't. He
keeps on saying absolute, like he said it at least once or twice in this thing. It's like he just thinks the NAP is an absolute thing. That's why I go back to what I was saying earlier. I think this guy really thinks that you have to be the most passive person in the world if you believe in the NAP because you're not allowed any aggression ever at whatsoever point, never in your life.
Right.
That didn't really make sense what I just said, but you get it.
I gotcha. There are times when aggression should occur, and there are times when violence happens, but not all of it is falls within the proper guidelines of the non-aggression.
Yeah, scratch my finger. You can take my whole finger to save the world.
Yeah. Although
it's just a finger.
What if I say no, and you scratch my finger? And I wanted the world to burn. Well, then afterwards, I sue you, and you face the repercussions of it.
Yeah, you're the only two left in the world, too. So you get to sue him and put him in jail because he aggressed upon you.
Yeah, so first of all, it's a false dilemma.
For sure.
There are so many things that it's not just an A or B. Sometimes there's a C, or there's a not A,
or there's
and
a Z,
not B.
Or there's an X.
Yeah. So there are many factors. Now, I understand, and all metaphors and similes break down, of course. But this is one where he's not understanding the legitimate use of force. All right, and I think with that one, we'll stop there and pick up next time with numbers 4. What are we on? 3 through 6. All right, so this is the Road to Freedom podcast, and as always, live radically and live free.
And legalize it. Oh, wait, it's already been legalized in Michigan. We'll legalize it everywhere.